Hello, Internet. Welcome to A Voice in the Middle. My name is Dustin, and has it been a long time since I pushed a video out? When I first wanted to make this channel, it was pre 2020 election drama, right? It was pre the Capitol Hill riot, it was pre any of the denialism, all the rampant false reports of fraud, any of that. I made this channel for the sole purpose as a Republican, I was sick of how much a radicalized version of the right were taking over the airwaves and taking over the direction the Republican Party was going. I grew up in South Texas, and where I grew up, to be conservative was to be Christian, and be Christian was to be conservative. That's just it was my worldview I was brought up with. There was no the Democrats were evil, the Democrats were baby killers, the Democrats were all these things. And then I moved to New York for college. And while I didn't agree with a lot of the policies, I had a lot of great conversations with a lot of great people. And I realized it's not so black and white. I realized that there was a lot more gray in some of these areas in the way we think about things. And so that changed my worldview and my perspective. So during the latter part of the Trump administration, especially, I became fed up with the free pass that we were just giving President Trump at the time. I liked a lot of his policies. I agreed with a lot of things he was trying to do. I hated the way he went about doing some of them, and I absolutely deplored the way he treated people and behaved. And I was shocked and saddened at the fact that the Republican Party, we wouldn't call him out on any of this. And anyone that did was criticized. They were essentially shunned. And so I decided I was going to make this channel for the hopes to maybe be a voice of reason with all this extremism we have on both sides of the aisle, both from the right and from the left. Is I wanted to try to be a voice of compromise, a voice of reason, that I could bring us together and that we could remember that as much as we disagree about so much, the reality is there's a lot we agree on. And I think there's more that we do agree on than we disagree with. And even with the areas that we disagree, a lot of times we agree that a problem exists. We agree that a solution needs to occur. We just disagree on how to get to that solution. And instead of turning around and trying to find some sort of compromise, trying to find something that works in the middle, we want to force ideology on people. And we want to basically force control on people and force the left to succumb to the right, or for the right to succumb to the left. And it's on both sides. And this isn't about policy anymore in politics. It's about power. It's about control. It's about scaring people into submission and pushing the influence even further. And so I started the channel, and then 2020 happened, and I just couldn't believe what I was seeing and what I was hearing. And then out of nowhere, I was approached and asked to take over social media for my local precinct within my congressional district of Arizona. I was asked to be an elected official within our precinct and to kind of help with the policy and the direction of the party. And I was kind of shocked by this because didn't they know where my position was? Didn't they know my grievances? And the reason I was so shocked is because within my precinct, you have one of the craziest of all the conspiracy theories and theorists in Liz Harris. And she was literally the vice chair that I was under. Meanwhile, I'm promoting a narrative very different than hers. Now, I supported doing an audit, not the way in which it was handled, but I supported an audit. I supported looking to see if any of these claims had any sort of validity to them whatsoever. But the truth is, at the end of the day, all we had a bunch of smoke, and there never was a fire found. And that smoke, I think, was honestly being generated by people by essentially burning, garbage in their backyard, right? Like we generated the smoke. We as a Republican Party generated the smoke to chase after the fire. And I was okay with that, but eventually enough became enough. And it reached a point that I had to put my foot down, and I had to decide, even if it destroys any sort of political future I'd want to have here in Arizona, I need to do the right thing, and I need to take a full stand against the lies and the misinformation that was going on within our party, within our state, within my district and my precinct. And so what happened? Well, I was illegally forced out. basically there was a coup to kick me out. Because what had transpired over the last 2 years basically was we were bringing in all these record number of new precinct committee member, all these new record number of Republican voters, but we were going to people that believed the election were stolen. We were targeting a specific group. We were targeting a group of people that believed the lies and the propaganda that we were spewing out as a party. We basically brought in people that believed anything and everything Kelly Ward said, believed anything and everything Liz Harris said, believed anything and everything Donald Trump said, and wouldn't question it. Because they could not believe that Arizona has changed, that Arizona could potentially be purple versus bright red. They just refused to believe and acknowledge that. So what they did is they held an illegal bylaw vote that was weeks past from when it should have occurred because they couldn't get the votes to get it to pass. And then finally, the week that they knew had the votes to get to pass, that's when the vote took place, right? So they staged it. And then after the bylaw vote happened and occurred, they illegally back applied it to me to force me out because it was targeted specifically in a way to get me out of office because I had refused to resign. I'd refused to just quit. And the only way they had to get me out at the time was that if it went to a vote, and if it went to the vote, I was going to be able to plead my case, and I was going to be able to give a lot of information that's being hidden from a lot of people. And so after they forced me out, honestly, I just stopped caring. What was I going to do? This juggernaut of Trumpism and MAGAism and everything else, I wasn't going to be able to stop it. I had done the right thing. I had stood my ground. I had held to my values. And I had nothing to show for it at the end. People that said they were going to support me didn't. Now, they also didn't stab me in the back. But they didn't support me, and I understand why. It's because they didn't want political fallout, because these are elected officials. These are people that have elected positions within the city and the state and the county. So while they had said they were going to support me, and then they didn't, but they did talk highly of me. They did support me as a person. Just when push came to serve, and I wanted to push back against the illegal bylaw vote, I was going to be left alone, and I wasn't going to be able to afford to sue the precinct or the party or the state in order to get that changed. And what good would that have done, right? They had turned around and they had just completely created my precinct to be the most conspiracy theorist, non-critical thinking precinct that exists in the state of Arizona. And then this past election occurred. And I was really hoping for a moment that it would be a wake-up call to the Republican Party of Arizona, to the Republican Party of my precinct and congressional district, that Arizona has changed. That we are not a diehard red state anymore. That we are very, very purple. That people want an independent, moderate solution to a lot of our issues. They don't want the extremism of the right or the left. They want something more in the middle, and they want compromise. They want facts. They want to know, how are you going to put forth policies that protect us? How are you going to put forth policies that are going to make us better? What are you going to do to benefit me? Not what propaganda are you selling and how are you trying to scare me into submission? But what are you going to actually do to better my life on a day-to-day basis? But the opposite occurred. We lost the election across the country. And in Arizona specifically, we lost. Republicans lost. But now we're immediately saying, oh, it's fraud, fraud, fraud. And I, for the first time, have to say, I'm ashamed. I'm ashamed of what the Republican Party has become. And I'm ashamed that to be a Republican means you have to be a MAGAfied. It means you have to believe in conspiracy theories. It means you have to believe in fraud with no evidence of fraud occurring. And if you question that narrative whatsoever, you are pushed out. And I want to make something very, very clear. We are in a dangerous place in our state. We are in a dangerous place in our country. Because these extremist point of views on both the right and the left, they're not trying to benefit anybody. They are trying to control us. They are trying to influence our votes through fear, not through policy. And it's time we stand up against that and we say it's enough is enough. It's time we say that we're not going to listen to this or buy it anymore. And so if you're a Republican and you're listening to this and you haven't turned this video off, I'm going to encourage you, let your voice be heard if you don't buy into this. Be willing to stand up against the extremism. Be willing to stand up against just the sheer insanity of what's taking place within our party. If you're an independent or a moderate left or even an extreme member of the left and you're still watching this video and you're like, oh my gosh, a common sense Republican, I'm sorry for what our party is doing for this country. And especially to independents, because here's the reality. I don't like a lot of what Mark Kelly has done over the last few years. I'm not a huge fan of Hobbs. But I know a lot of Republicans that voted for both of them because they feel like there was more danger in Trumpism spreading throughout Arizona, more long-term damage that could have to our state than potentially leftist policies. So to the independents, I'm sorry if you felt like you didn't have a choice on who to vote for because you had to vote for integrity over policy. Because I know also a lot of Republicans felt that way as well. Listen, more videos to come soon. I've got a lot to talk about, a lot of insight to give, a lot of information that isn't out there that I'm privy to that I want to share, and it's time for it to come out. In the meantime, stay hopeful, and let's try to bring us back to where we should be, and that's especially in this state that's in the middle. This is Dustin. God bless.